Have you ever wondered what it would be like to live under the world's most terrifying dictator? I mean, really live there. A place where the government controls every single part of your life, what job you get, where you live, even what kind of haircut you're allowed to have. Well, that's exactly the reality we're going to dive into today as we look at life inside the world's most isolated nation.
To really wrap your head around North Korea, you have to start with its political prison camps. The system is so brutal that people are literally born inside them and never see the outside world. This quote from Shin Dong-hook, it is absolutely chilling, and it really sets the stage for everything else we're about to uncover.
So, we're going to start with a personal story. The story of one man, Shin Dong-hyuk. And get this, he wasn't sent to a political prison camp, he was born in one. His story is just an unbelievable window into the cruelty and the mechanics of the North Korean regime.
Just look at this timeline. It charts a life of just unimaginable horror. Born in Camp 14, Shin's entire childhood was a battle for survival. At only 13 years old, he was so desperate for food that he informed on his own mother and brother's plan to escape. And then he was forced to watch their public execution. His escape at 23 is just as harrowing. He climbed over an electrified fence, using the body of his friend to shield him from the deadly current. The fact that he went from that to becoming a global human rights advocate is, well, it's just extraordinary.
So you're probably asking, why was he born there in the first place? It all comes down to this one terrifying concept: guilt by association. In North Korea, if you commit a political crime, it's not just you who gets punished. No, the regime can imprison your entire family for 3 generations. Shin's uncle had fled to South Korea, and for that one crime, his whole family line, including Shin, who wasn't even born yet, was condemned. Shin's story is horrifying, but it's just one piece of a much, much larger system. So let's zoom out and look at the architecture of control that governs the entire nation. How does a regime maintain this kind of power over 25 million people?
You know, this image really says it all. You look at satellite images at night, and you see South Korea and China just blazing with light, and then North Korea, it's just this black hole in the middle. And that's not some metaphor, that's the reality of a country with a collapsed economy and almost no basic resources, like electricity.
But here's the crazy part. It wasn't always this way. For decades, North Korea was actually doing better than South Korea. Its per capita GDP was higher than India's and China's. But when its main backer, the Soviet Union, collapsed in the 90s, the whole economy just crashed. This led to a catastrophic man-made famine that killed up to 2 million people and really set the stage for the desperate situation we see today.
So you'd think the state's response would be reform, right? Wrong. It was even tighter control. It starts with the big things, like your job. You don't get to choose your career. The government decides your occupation for you. Period.
The government also decides where you live. The capital, Pyongyang, it's like this bubble of privilege, but it's only for the most loyal elite. Everyone else is basically locked out.
And the control gets down to the most absurdly personal things. The government even decides what your hair looks like. There's literally a list of state-approved styles you have to pick from.
The level of detail here is just astounding. There are these approved hairstyle lists, but of course, Kim Jong-un's signature cut isn't on them. No one else is allowed to copy it. Blue jeans, ripped jeans, red lipstick, all banned as signs of Western culture. Watching a smuggled movie from South Korea, that could get you years of hard labor or even a public execution. And your phone? Get this, it's programmed to take random screenshots and send them straight to government servers.
So how on earth do they manage this level of control? The main tool is something called the Songbun system. You can think of it as a political caste system. It's all based on how loyal your family is perceived to be to the Kim dynasty.
The whole system breaks down into 3 classes. You have the core class. These are the loyal elites who get the best of everything in Pyongyang. Then there's the wavering class, which is most people. They're constantly being watched and get way fewer resources. And finally, the hostile class. They're considered enemies of the state, forced into the worst jobs, given almost no food, and often end up in the prison camps. Your Songbun decides your entire life, and you can't escape it.
But maybe the most twisted part of this whole thing is how it turns people against each other. The regime actually encourages neighbors, coworkers, and even family members to spy on one another. As this defector said, you just can't trust anyone. This paranoia completely shatters the most basic human bonds, which makes any kind of organized resistance almost impossible. It's this incredible architecture of total control,
built on fear and division. But it makes you wonder, can a system that's this oppressive, this brittle, really last forever?
Because despite everything the regime does, cracks are starting to show. There's a quiet, silent revolution happening, and it's not being driven by politicians or soldiers. It's being driven by ordinary people who are just trying to survive.
It all starts with something called the Jangmadang. These are black markets that just popped up during the Great Famine because the state couldn't feed its own people anymore. They were born out of pure necessity. But now, they're the lifeblood of the North Korean economy. And more importantly, they become these central hubs for the flow of goods, money, and forbidden information from the outside world.
And what's amazing is who's running these markets. Most men are stuck in these useless state jobs that pay nothing, so it's the women who have stepped up. Through their work in the Jangmadang, women now earn over 70% of a typical family's income. This has caused this huge, unplanned shift in the country's social and economic power.
And it's not just goods being traded in these markets. The humble little USB stick has become a weapon of revolution. Data from people who've escaped shows that 81% of them had access to USBs, and an incredible 98% of those were using them to watch illegal foreign media. Every smuggled South Korean TV show chips away a little more of the state's propaganda.
But here's the ultimate irony. The regime's own corruption is what's undermining its control. Government officials get paid so little that they have to take bribes to survive. This means regular people can just pay their way out of trouble. Bribe a guard to look the other way while you watch that foreign film. And all of this bribery is slowly eating away at the fear that the system needs to function.
So, what does this all mean for the future? Well, the story of North Korea offers these powerful, universal lessons about the struggle between oppression and freedom, between division and unity.
At its heart, this is a conflict between two totally opposite sets of tools. The regime's power comes from tools of division, fear, propaganda, isolation, and distrust. But the people are slowly building their own power with tools of unity: the markets, outside information, and the shared secrets that actually build trust between them.
So what's the big takeaway here? First, that dictatorships often create the very problems that end up destroying them. Second, that unity, the trust you build by trading in a market or secretly watching a movie together, is the ultimate weapon against a system built on division. And finally, it's just a stark reminder that the simple freedoms we have, the freedom to choose our job, our clothes, what we watch, they are incredibly precious.
So it all comes down to one last simple question. After everything we've seen, from the camps to the markets, what do you think is ultimately more powerful? Decades of state propaganda or a single smuggled USB stick filled with the truth?